This morning I'm at the Johnston Ridge Observatory at Mount St. Helens, and I wanted to make this video to commemorate the anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens. May 18th, it will be 45 years since the mountain erupted. And let me give you a quick timeline of what took place up to May 18th. On March 16, 1980, the mountain showed its first signs of activity. And on March 27th, Mount St. Helens had its first eruption in over 100 years, and it created a crater 250 feet wide. On April 1st, plumes of steam and ash reached as high as 20,000 feet. And from May 7th to May 17th, more than 10,000 earthquakes took place, and the north flank grew out about 450 feet. And you'll remember, if you were around at that time, you will remember hearing on the news about the bulge on the side of the mountain growing, and it was growing 6.5 feet a day. On May 17th, people who had cabins or lodges around Spirit Lake were allowed into the red zone for the day to get their belongings. And on May 18th, at 8:32 a.m., a 5.1 magnitude earthquake occurred, causing the bulge to give way and causing the largest debris landslide ever recorded. And then eruptions blasted laterally, accelerating the debris from the landslide more than 300 miles an hour. Sadly, 57 people lost their lives in the eruption. Interestingly enough, of the 57, only 3 were in the red zone. Now, the best known of those 57 is volcanist David Johnston. And it's interesting to note that David was actually filling in for someone else that morning on the mountain. The other person had other obligations, so he volunteered to stay on the mountain on the night of the 17th and was there on the morning of May 18th. And including the man who David was filling in for, David probably saved 4 lives that day. The life of his assistant, who he sent to California, and there were 2 young women who were studying the mountain, and they came up and talked to David the night before on May 17th, and they were planning on camping on the mountain, and David strongly urged them to go down the mountain and get a motel in Vancouver. He said to stay on the mountain was not safe. And at 8:32 a.m. on May 18th, David Johnston uttered his now infamous last words, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." It's believed he was killed instantly. Besides the loss of life, more than 185 miles of highway was destroyed, and 27 bridges were washed out. But we do want to note that even with the loss of life, as tragic as that was, and the devastation that took place, there are a few things that people could be thankful for on that day. First, that it happened on a Sunday. On any other day, there would have been loggers in the woods that were affected by that blast. And also that it happened the time of the morning that it happened, because people were going to be allowed back in to the red zone. later that day. And thirdly, that the lateral blast went the direction it did. If you look at the mountain, it went out toward Spirit Lake and actually caused a tidal wave that emptied Spirit Lake. Now think if that blast had taken place the direction of the Toutle Valley. How it would have affected Toutle, Castle Rock, Kelso, and Longview. One of the things that was unexpected after the eruption was how quick life came back to the mountain. They say 1 month after the eruption, avalanche lilies were found blooming on the mountain. And it's believed that as elk returned to the mountain, the elk droppings carried seeds of plant life that caused and accelerated the growth of plants on the mountain. And they're not quite sure how the mountain goats came back to the mountain. Some believe they were on the backside of the mountain and survived. Others believe they migrated, that they would have migrated from Mount Adams. But now there's a quite large herd of mountain goats, actually a few large herds of mountain goats on the mountain. But as we think of how the mountain has come back, I believe that God has placed a resilience in His creation. And we do want to, at this time, take a few moments, just a few seconds, for a moment of silence in memory of those who lost their lives on the mountain on May 18th, 1980. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been informative. Have a good day.